I'm Jonathan Ricard. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer here at Resonate. So far in this webinar series, our attendees have had the opportunity to learn more about the true motivations that are driving consumers' concerns around affordability. We've discussed how brands are evolving for growth and developing forward-looking marketing engines. Today, we're going to shift gears and really be focused at the way independent agencies can drive better business outcomes and continue on a path for growth despite all the change in the market. I'm going to spend some time talking about the top 5 things you can do and how this really translates to ways to start to think about winning more business, transforming your business, and partnering with your clients. And becoming a partner with your clients can't live without. And the focus for me is over the next, I think this is going to take us about 25 minutes to talk through most of the content and kind of elaborate on it. Then we'll have a period for some questions and be able to move forward from, into that. So should wrap up probably around 135, 140 at the latest as we go today, just to set some expectations for the group on what we can do today. All right, and with that, I'm going to kind of dive in and keep going. So what we're going to cover, and I'll just reframe, the subject header and the topic here is it's going to be a deep discussion into the transformation we see happening across the agency landscape, why it matters, and the fact that despite most of the popular commentary, it's not just about AI, right? What I believe strongly is that there's an opportunity here as for us to continue to look at the evolutions that are happening in the market and think about why does that matter for agencies and what's going to change. How do you maintain competitive advantage? How do you continue to thrive in a market that seems to be changing substantially every 3 to 6 months right now? So our approach is going to be, we're going to talk to you about 5 steps. And these are coming out of, and my background here at Resonate, I've been with Resonate now for almost 10 years. I've been in data-driven marketing my entire career. And my focus over the last 10 has been how do we work with agencies and with advertisers on building the best approach for their go-to-market. And there's been a lot of change in the industry on this. So we're going to talk about 5 steps we're seeing our clients start to do. We're going to talk about steps we're seeing in the industry, even from non-clients, and share with you with some more practical level detail on how we can see this transformation that's coming to the agency space and to marketers in general, right? And I think it applies in both cases. The first step we're going to talk about is consolidating the data layer. I'm going to go into details about what that means for each of these subpoints, but I want to give you the headlines. The second one is speed kills. We have to move faster, right? There's an entire talk track around how fast the industry is going to be as it relates to the rise of generative AI and agents, and I want to talk through that a little bit. The third one is business model debt. Historically, we've always talked about in the ad tech ecosystem the idea that there's tech debt right behind any services, any software company, I should say. I actually think right now there's a business model debt that's going to hold back agencies from being competitive and transforming their business, whether they're a holdco down to a regional independent. The fourth one is let's talk about this data layer again, right? What does it mean to start with a data layer for your business? And then the last one is we're going to be outcome focused here, right? Our goal is not to be just focused on process. It's going to be focused on the outcomes you can deliver and ways that you can go and build those solutions into your business model. So with that, I'm just going to get started and we'll continue the discussion. So again, consolidate the consumer layer, right? What do we mean by that? When I think about a consumer layer, I want to talk about it in terms of there's an idea out in the market today of the consumer data layer, right? It could be considered an ID spine. It could be considered a identity graph, right? There's a lot of words being used for this idea of who's going to understand the consumer, who's going to have the ability to connect client level data, right? So client first party data into a service package that allows you to power certain outcomes. And how do you think about the consumer data layer, not just as something that is a abstract piece of service, but instead as a core infrastructure product for your business, right? So when we think about this, we think about there's a challenge right now. Consumer data, CRM data from your clients, site visitor data, ad exposure, data that you already have inside of your agency, they live in separate places, right? And they're used for different standalone use cases, right? And most agencies today, except for the holdcos who went out and spent billions of dollars buying it, don't own a consumer data layer that is used to create products and create leverage for client data. And those two things are really important to make sure we talk about is there's not a solution that says, I understand the consumer in a way that's going to integrate with my client data and allow me to take action on it. And what I would say is that the competitive market today around how do you create a differentiated agency and the agency of the future, is starting to be focused on we have to have a proprietary answer to ways to create knowledge from a consumer data layer. The data layer itself isn't the product. The product is how do we identify the right audiences we're going to target? How do we identify addressability? How do we build data margin by having these services available to us internally as infrastructure and being able to create a revenue channel against it? And so we're going to get into, this step here is really big idea. Can you say to your clients and to your prospects, I have a multi-ID consumer layer that allows me to take in your data to capture all of our engagement with customers and be able to turn that into something you can buy from me as a product, right? Something that's included in our service package to you. And it should be relevant across every client scope that you've got, right? And it should be something that you're saying as an agency, I need somebody to own this and be accountable for it, right? That it is part of our revenue generation strategy. And that person, I'll tell you today, I'm often seeing is a chief product officer or it's the head of sales, right? That has to own this. If you drill it down one more layer, it might be the head of data solutions or data products, even as another name title. But you've got to be thinking about if you don't have a way to, if you're relying on a bunch of third parties that live outside of your four walls to tell you who you're reaching, to tell you what's important about those people. If you're buying commodity off the shelf data sets and paying a third party for that rather than generating your own margin, you're missing out on the transformation that's happened in the industry over the last couple of years. And it used to be, again, only in the realm of holdcos that this mattered. But what we're seeing today is this is moving to all agencies need to have an answer to this question. And it's a mix of, buy, build, and rent to solve for it, right? So let's talk about the steps that go into it. First, an example. We think about Stagwell, they're a very large kind of independent holding company right now. Stagwell said, hey, we need to continue to innovate and compete with the larger holdcos because that's where they're setting their target performance against us. How are they going to go win against those large clients or those large, agency conglomerates? They would say that their success and their ability in recent press releases to talk about being the number one emerging independent challenger is because they built a proprietary OS and data layer. Right now, they had certain unique assets. They had Harris Poll. They have other things that are inside of this. But their focus was we have to have this answer. And when you think about the competitive set that answer represents, we have to have this answer to compete with Omnicom's Omni, with Publicis Epsilon, with Havas Converged, with WPP Choreograph. There's with Horizon Blue, right? You have to have a bigger answer. So, we look at a market example here and say, this is something that your competitors are already on the path on, right? And frankly, if you're a brand marketer today, the agencies you're talking to should be on a path to this type of, approach because it's essential. So when we think about how do you consolidate it, right? The first step, and this is a hard one because there's a lot of costs typically associated with starting to build a consumer data layer that hasn't been borne by the agency up to date, is you have to agree that you need this, right? If your executive team isn't on board, that there has to be investment in being able to do more with client first party data, with the agency's internal data sets, with the engagement and exposure data you're getting by running media campaigns, by being active in consumer outreach, this isn't going to go anywhere. The second step is it has to be a multi-ID matching capability solution. And if you've got certain assets, you might be able to build this in-house. If you don't, you're going to want to go and select a partner that's going to help you bring not only identity data sets, right? So think of things like pseudo-anonymous IDs like hashed email or residential IP address, but also things like the attributes that are associated to those that describe those consumers and let you develop insights and action. But also things like, are they going to be able to give you name and address? Are you going to be able to use this in cross-channel, right? Is it a digital-only solution? Or is it going to allow you to do things with, direct mail, linear TV, CTV? Are you going to be able to pull it into CRM onboarding and leverage it in other mechanisms? Those are the places that you've got to look at this from a partner selection process if you're not going to be able to build it yourself, right? The third piece is you have to map the data layer to multiple outcomes. Insights, audience activation, and measurement being some of the top ones, right? There has to be a sense that you're not building this data layer as infrastructure just to say you have a data layer. It's to deliver very specific solutions to your clients, right? And those solutions have to be tied to a use case that's in scope for your work with that client and gives you a chance to expand your scope across these elements, right? Then you've got to productize this, right? This isn't something that's just overhead when you treat it to your clients. And what we're seeing in the industry is how do you build proprietary assets that talk about we have built something. It's typically a named solution, right? If you're at PMG, you might be calling it Ally OS or Ally OS. Sorry, I always want to say Ally based on legacy thinking about that combination of letters. It might be W Promotes Polaris solution. Again, it might be Havas Converged, right? But you've got to have a idea that this is a product that is the agency's operating product set. It's not something you just create custom for each client, but then you sell it to each client, right? It's part of your core service package for each client as you go. And then the last one is again this idea of ownership. Um, this will die by committee, right? For most of what we see in the market is this is going to be information that at an agency level has to be owned by an individual and it has to be tasked into a revenue story because that's the only way you make transformation from what you do today to what you could do going forward if you started to lean in on are we thinking about a consumer data and are we ready to move forward? Step two, right? Speed kills is a old saying here, typically out of the military, and move faster, right? One of the ways that you build competitive advantage, sorry, my mouse got sensitive there, is you learn more about your target customers faster than your competition, and you take action faster, right? And right now, there's a few challenges that everyone's dealing with around what constitutes change in our industry, right? One of them is that consumer behavior is changing fast right now, right? So if you're not understanding the consumer at a recency level, if you're not thinking about the differences between gas prices in January and today and what they matter for consumers around affordability, if you're not thinking about discretionary income as we see inflation or inflation going up, inflation going down, right? If you don't understand those types of changes and you're using data that isn't giving you that type of upset, that type of reset on your understanding, you're not going to be able to move fast enough in understanding how to drive incremental value to your customers. So you've got to have insights, action, and measurement available to you in real time. And today, some of that real time might mean via AI agents, because you can't necessarily wait for your team to get back from vacation this summer, right? And the challenge here for most clients of these two factors is how quickly can we execute on changes we can observe? How quickly can we make a shift happen that drives incremental lift for the campaign we're running, for the creatives we're building, and better understand it? And so the shift we're seeing folks make is we have to have more agentic workflows in the industry. I actually think agentic workflows still sound like they're coming, right? That they're not here yet today. But I think across the folks on this call today, each set of partners here is probably doing something today that starts to go beyond Claude prompts and starts to lean into, are we letting an agent do more work for us? Right. And the answer is probably yes, right? And that's got to start happening with, across your engagement data sets on media, on measurement, to better understand how you can pull that forward and start to use it to create new action. The second piece here is, closing the loop from signal to live campaign actions, right? It's a lot of systems today, and walled gardens being one of them, whether it's, whether you think about Meta or whether you think about Google, are doing great at taking signal in live campaign data sets to give you an outcome, but they're not necessarily helping you deliver cross-channel results, right? The information that you need isn't just in the CPA or the performance metrics of the campaign you're running, right? It's how do you do more with it? How do you learn from that data set to go and look at online and offline data, for example, if you're working with a retailer or someone who has e-commerce? How do you start to bring those two pieces together if they're brick and mortar? Very hard to do if you don't own some of the idea of, am I going to be able to see this data and put it into multiple channels? And the other piece around this right now is build small, right? What do I mean by that is build for fast outcomes today, something you can take advantage of because you're going to be rebuilding often. One of the things we've seen at Resonate is our own development cycles are getting smaller and smaller as we stay hyper focused on what can we deliver as a valuable solution right now with an expectation that given the advantages that we're seeing in using AI and automation and we use Claude and Claude code, we know we're going to be rebuilding things, right? We're going to improve them rapidly. So build small to get out in the market and then expect to kind of constantly iterate on the solutions you're bringing. And one of the examples here is RP is a client of ours, and their team has been really successful in the industry at providing intelligence that drives business impact, right? And how did we help them move faster? Was they had audience strategy cycles that ran 2 weeks or more, right? So now you've got the ability to drive both audience strategy cycles in a day, and you can generate using agentic prompts, and RPA is doing this um, in seconds, right? Multiple personas with mutually exclusive subsegments to drive creative strategy, media planning cycles, and to ultimately allow you to compress the time to value again into seconds from weekly cycles. This is massive time to value and amplification of your current team, and something we expect people to lean in on and continue to do. So when you think about what to do on this, it's do you see bottlenecks in your current workflow? And I think we just got a question I'll answer at the end here today on like how do you identify those workflows and how do you think about agentic workflows with partners such as Resonate, right? Happy to talk to that one at the end of today. But identify where you think you're getting stuck, right? Are those workflows integrated with orchestration layers, right? And I always say it's powered by AI and people. There's not going to be workflows in the next 6 to 9 months that doesn't have some level of AI involved in it, my belief. But there still has to be people who are experts to make sure the AI is giving them the right answers and that you're building the right solutions and that it passes a trust test by people for your clients. You got to link this. And I would say ultimately start thinking about how you link this to your consumer data layer so you can get that cross-channel view. And then ultimately build for that time to value, not for perfection. In this age of rapid iteration, trying to make sure you're solving every problem in your first launch is not going to work. And I've always disliked the term, minimally viable product. Like I just dislike it, right? It suggests that it's not valuable up front. But know that you can build value in chunks now and move faster. And you're going to be able to iterate much faster than you ever were before because of the value that's coming out of AI-based code work and anything that's software related. So definitely think we need to keep leaning in on the idea of you can't move fast if you're trying to solve everything up front. And so, find your path on what can you fix today to move just a little bit faster. It might be how do you generate an audience using an AI agent? It might be how do you use synthetic panels to answer questions faster than traditional research? But start to find those bottlenecks that are slowing your teams down and build to that future state. This one I think is really important, right? The idea that we have to fight business model debt in our industry right now. And what I see in business model debt is really simple, right? It's we've got an industry, we've got contracts, we've got relationships that were based on how do we mark up FTE costs and services costs, right? It's billable hours. And in the rise of an AI, generative AI future state is one answer. AI agents is another answer. We talk to agencies all the time that are telling us clients are already asking, how much cheaper are my service bills going to get because you're doing so much more with AI, right? How much does a press release cost today versus what it did 2 years ago, right? How quickly are the costs being compressed, which effectively means how quickly are margins being compressed. So every client is operating under a business model debt right now, where clients are asking them to figure out how to bring price down, but the pricing that's inside of these old models is where the margin lived, right? And so, you're at risk to folks that are going to come in and say, we'll do this with a completely different structure. And it's becoming a real differentiator in the industry. Can you come in and how do you come in and say, I'm going to bring you something valuable, but at the same time protect your current business, right? So the differentiator becomes data plus outcomes in this model, right? Media commissions are getting pressure on them as well. How do you then make up that margin through having proprietary data solutions to sell, right? You have to have a pricing philosophy on on what you're going to build to make this change. Is it a percentage media? Is it a retainer? Is it a product that they just sign a SaaS license to from you as the agency? Or is it bundled into an overall series of you're going to get these services, and these services at set price points for a certain scale, right? And the other piece here is not everything you're going to do should be a standalone product, but you should figure out how to make sure that the ones that are going to scale across most of your clients in your new business pitch are going to give you that perspective of this probably should be a product now, not just a service offering. This shouldn't be something that I talk about how long it takes me to deliver it. It should be something I talk about in terms of this product's going to drive these outcomes, and that value is X. And that's the transition that we think is happening on this business model shift. So Where we see the value on this is um, you've got to identify the products that you can develop and scale with competitive advantage. It means it has to be relevant to how your agency goes to market today. It's got to be part of your go-to-market. If you're trying to lean in on something that you don't believe offers you competitive advantage, given your client roster and your role in the in your with your clients, it's probably not the right place to go, right? It's easy to try to chase too many adjacent things, but identify where you can really scale it. When you have that candidate list, right, it then becomes a question of can you rank the candidate products to say, if we go through our current scope, how much of this is new outcomes and ultimately new expansion sales for us with our clients? How can we transition some of the loss of margin from billable hours into product margin, right? And how does that help our business grow? Right? From that point, I do lean in a little bit on saying we should launch these things as services, right? Because as you start to build your product and you start to put it at the top of the new business development cycle and existing client upsell, you want proof points internally, right? With every product we bring to our agency clients, we want to work with them first on, hey, let's do this for a client as a beta so that you get an internal case study on this. Because nothing helps us scale our business more than internal folks at our clients telling their coworkers, their peers, their colleagues, hey, this thing really worked for me. You guys should give it a try for, client XYZ, right? As you build this out, before you make the giant infrastructure pitch, make sure you validated that you're going to see that client need for it. That's how I describe most of our innovation has come from is taking something that either a client's asked for or we've independently developed and saying, is there enough there here to make this a product, or do we just treat this as custom professional services? In today's world, custom professional services has its place, but value is created by having a product you can rinse and repeat across your book of business. The next part is testing it. Today, I would say that we and everybody else throws a ton of money at tokens to see how we can use AI to do jobs that are currently handled by people, right? I think you constantly have to decide, is a agentic model, is it worth investing in figuring some of this out to scale our team of experts? Or does this solution still best run with minimal AI and more people associated to it, right? And I think that's still part of the infrastructure play we're all making today is, are we finding the right shift in how much do we invest in the automation that can be powered through AI agents versus is it actually cheaper to have a person do that work? Or is the success require us to have a person inside of that workflow? And so we should think about how we model that. I think that's a really, I would tell you, I don't have the answer. I don't think, anybody has a full answer on that yet. You can read stories about folks rehiring junior engineers after, a couple of years of working around with whether it's Claude or other, coding AI applications because they ultimately decided they actually need the people to help them get some of that work done. It's cheaper. It's more effective. The last step is, of course, the go-to-market on this. You got to go to market with the outcome products that will help you compete and thrive. And I'm going to stress that word outcome here. Products don't sell themselves, right? Nobody buys a product from you as a company. They want to buy an outcome from you. And so the product has to be directly mapped to that outcome. And it has to explain why it's going to work if you're going to differentiate it as a standalone product. If it's part of your service infrastructure, then you don't have to necessarily call that out as a specific product set, right? That's a series of outcomes that help you run better media or help you conduct better analysis or help you develop better personas, but it may not be the product. So know which ones are outcome products. You're going to buy this from me because it's going to drive more efficiency here, here, and here. Otherwise, you can run that, it starts to look like you're offering up, too many variations of service and clients don't buy complexity, right? They buy folks who can help them solve the complexity and that are leaning in on saying, we understand the transformation that's happening in the industry. And, by transitioning your business model to something that doesn't evoke legacy billing hours, you can transition that to products that are driving outcomes and effectively amplify the team you've got in place today, driving success. So marketplace example on this, I'm actually going to talk about where the holdcos sit, right? So when you think about what's happening in the market today, Horizon's talking about adding media buying agents to its Blue platform this June, right? They brought that post out, right? Like they want you to use an agentic model to go and understand who your audience is, understand how they fit across the total population of the US, understand how you can go get those audiences and ship them to a DSP to run a campaign on it. right? And they're going to say, hey, clients can do this themselves or their internal teams can do this, right? WPP is offering, their open product set with both clients and internal users leveraging agentic AI solutions, right? So the goal here in both cases is let's get out of this business model debt of billable hours and let's get to solutions and services that clients can just, effectively pay for and get the outcomes they want, right? And it's not so much needing to worry about how are you going to bill every person's time on this. It's about what's the outcome you're delivering and what's the cost to go to get to that outcome, right? And it's already here, right? And this allows conversation we've had now for a couple of years. The rise of AI and agentic solutions, coupled with all of the advancements in how, whether it's from federated data solutions like Snowflake, whether it's from, clean rooms allowing things, these automated solutions are going to make it a lot easier for the holdcos to come, what I'll describe as take on different client, rosters than they would have normally gone after, right? That their business model wouldn't have supported their approach to work with clients that were more regional or more multi-state, but now they can step into these markets. They can step into more niche markets because they're putting some of these tools in the hands of the clients themselves as part of their service package, as opposed to just people and experts, right? They're bringing those along for sure, but you've got another way to enter these markets with a cheaper cost of service, which makes their pursuit of revenue and margin, change their client composition. So every independent agency needs to be thinking about how long do I have before Omni starts showing up on my competitive pitches, right? Before Horizon's in my competitive pitch. So I'm going to dive a little bit more into the data layer, because I actually think that if you're going to build a product that's going to make your shift of your business model, your shift of a agentic based, let's call it a speed kills model set here, you've got to have at least one win inside of this option, inside of this that ties itself to what the market product fit looks like right now. And you shouldn't be trying to productize everything at once, right? And you shouldn't be trying to think about this shift as being something that's going to work for every client in terms of new pricing models, right? But what you have to do is say, we need as an agency to have a solution that covers the trends of the industry where client first party data and agency in-house data and trusted third party data represents the ground truth and effectively the fuel to power agentic solutions, right? Anyone can ask ChatGPT to give them an audience persona, right? But how do you make that audience persona something that is relevant to your client, that includes an ID graph so it's distributable through agents to your DSP, your SSP, to your measurement tools, right? And how do you make certain that it has value so that it's worth selling it, right? Because if clients can just go and ask ChatGPT the same question you did on who's my best customer and how should I reach them, there's not a lot of room for experts in that if we believe that's good enough, right? So your special sauce has to come into the equation as what are we building as an agency that starts to build this credibility of we're building products that we take to clients that drive results, right? So when we think about this piece, for 99% of the folks we work with, they're going to start with vendor selection. They're going to need to understand who am I talking to? How do I find someone who handles the right scope of data identity, orchestration, identity resolution, if that's something you want to work with, and has the right data set in terms of attributes associated to those IDs so that you can create compelling stories around, hey, we know this is the right person to reach, and that can be enriched with client files, existing agency ad logs, existing agency third-party data relationships, right? You've got to find ways to join those pieces together. The second piece is you got to standardize it. It's easy to chase custom for every client, but the reality is you've got to have a standard approach to what your inputs are in terms of what data do you need from clients, what identities do you need from clients, how do you make sure your team can scale the operations on it, and you've got to just tell clients, hey, this is what the outputs look like. This is what you're going to get back, whether it's deliverables to the client or deliverables to how you're going to sync data with your largest media partners, right? And where you're actually going to put addressable audiences to work, or how it's going to work inside of your measurement cycle. And how does it link in, for example, with Trade Desk's REDS export files, right? What are you going to do there to build a standardized approach inside of the data layer option? The third one is make sure that that data layer has a map to the outcomes. It feels a little bit like I'm going to be hyper focused on outcomes because I think in this point, clients are asking for incrementality. They're asking for outcomes. When you change the billing models, when you change the relationship to one of it's products, not just people and services, they want to know what they're buying through that product. So you've got to tie that really tightly together and obviously validate it to where you want your agency to be and where you think you can compete most effectively and where it adds value to clients. Today, I think there's, like I said, we've caught something in the market around the idea of agencies of all sizes have to do more with their client first party data. It's a universal trend right now, and it's exciting because clients at some points in time were like reluctant to share for some reason, but now I think they know that without some of their own performance data, in terms of who their customers are and how they've been able to reach them, it's very hard to kind of scale to incremental lift, right? And so it's a really, again, like I said, it's an exciting opportunity on it, but it also requires, knowing the clients being convinced, you give us this data as part of our data layer, let us do these services for you through this product, and you're going to get certain outcomes on it. Four here is really important. You've got to make sure you've spent the time to have your team be comfortable with why a data layer is something that the team needs to believe in, right? Why it's going to be transformative to your agency, how it's going to open up an entire new set of conversations with clients about what you can do for them and what's part of the relationship between your agency and that advertiser. This piece is, I think, oftentimes thought of as, is a little under invested in. But realistically, if you're talking to clients, you have to be training your existing team for for how you're going to do upsells and your new business team to transform the story of the agency. Because this now is going to be, it's not today, but it's getting very, very close to being a table stakes conversation with clients of a certain size. Is they want to know you can do first party data onboarding. You can help take in their site visitor data to optimize it. You can bring in media exposure data. You can build them the better and smarter personas. You're going to help them with new audience discovery. You're going to be able to link it back to their offline transactions, right? If you don't have any of those capabilities, or it sounds like a hodgepodge of off the shelf, like you don't have a unique answer for them, right? And so at some point, you want to be an expert in how a client's going to navigate using their own data effectively, even as much as you want to have your own products and services you're offering them. Oops, sorry. And the last one is obviously leads right into that is you got to be able to sell it. This shouldn't be something that's free, right? And a consumer data layer itself is infrastructure. The outcomes and the products you build on it are where you should be able to charge for these solutions because you're going to show the client that direct map between these outcomes are part of these costs. And it's not a silver bullet, right? But it is a ticket to the seat at the table. And what do I mean by that is having this become something that you can easily get scrubbed if you're not going to talk about how you understand the consumer, how you're going to be integrating data sets, how you're going to be making decisions faster. And this becomes part of the fuel for any of the future state agentic solutions, right? This is how it starts to scale up. So I lean in on the piece here of, I think one of the mistakes that can be made is because we'll talk about it a little bit as a consumer data layer is really like marketing infrastructure. At the same time, the outcomes and the products that you're going to build from it, those are what you have to sell. They have to have discrete value to clients. You don't want this just to be overhead, right? It can't be buried in your structure. Like you've got to find ways to show the cost and the value of it. One example that we'll use is that like as you start to think about building competitive data sets and building unique instances, Alma made a shift to leveraging really unique multicultural data sets internally and was able to drive a success of 11 out of 12 new business pitches that were won, right? So clear value in leading with data-based solutions and leading with understanding the consumer data layer and being able to show clients how you're going to bring that together for them. So our last one, and right as we're starting to be almost perfectly on time, I might be about 4 minutes over here, is this idea that's been throughout the entire deck. We could have made this step one. We left it at step five, right? Is that you're selling business outcomes and you're not selling your special process. You're not selling just your people, right? You're selling a win for the client that you're talking to, which I think almost everybody knows, but it sometimes gets lost. And so what we want to be leaning in on here is that Your business is going to win is you're going to deliver outcomes from your people and products. Your people are critical. And I think there's a lot of concern a few years ago that Gen AI was going to make people less important. I think the opposite's happening, right? As people have dealt with AI slop coming out of various, out of the systems they're using and their own people using it, as they've been dealing with kind of AI upstarts and, competitors coming into the market, right? You rapidly realize that Gen AI alone isn't going to get you to the answers, right? You're not going to do all of this in AI. You need subject matter experts. And even as, personally, I work with a ton in Claude, and I'm constantly asking Claude why it's wrong, right? And it always admits it. No, I totally missed that. I totally made a mistake. Um, but you need people who will understand that there's a mistake in the data, right? There's a mistake in something that's been generated. So it's about amplifying your marketing experts, your people in house, and giving them the products to go and sell now. That isn't just, that changes the model. And so when we think about this, like, marking up and media commissions going down right now is the story of the day. It's not going to create the margin you need to invest in your own business and successfully compete. So the shift is you've got to be thinking about, am I a product solution seller to clients? Is that really how I'm operating? Right? And it's not just about, hey, here's a tool we use, right? Because everybody uses a DSP. Everybody's going to use some sort of research platform. Everybody's going to have an optimization engine or a DCO, right? If you think about the agency stack, it's always kind of the same thing, right? What you want to say instead is we work on a model that is powered through various tools, but it has a few ground truths. It has ground truth in data. It has ground truth in being able to deliver outcomes. Here's how we show you those case studies that are about shifting fees from the hours my team spends working on your business instead to these are the products you're buying and what we're going to deliver to you in the outcome side of this. And the margin shift happens by not just buying things off the shelf for your clients, but by bringing them new products that you build, right? Instead of it being buying Experian data in the third-party marketplace or having Meta do the audience discovery, you're going to say instead, hey, we've done this work. We have agency X data sets that we've assembled, that we've built that are proprietary to us that we recommend you use. We're happy to buy other data if it works better, but think about how we build the right audience data sets for you. Let's know who your next best customer is, and that's what we want you to buy. And that's a totally different way to think about recovering revenue and margin that's currently being compressed, whether it's from the shift in billable hours or it's just the compression of media commissions inside of the space. And so, I think I'm going to go through this one a little bit quicker here and execute up on the line. The idea here is that you've got people with expertise and you're going to build products that amplify their expertise. Those are the two pieces that have to go together. The product is proof of your operating model. It's not just a feature, right? You built the product because it's how you drive success, how you drive outcomes, right? It's not a bright, shiny thing that you're just adding to your story as like the last slide in your deck or the first slide, depending on how you want to position it. But it's actually proof that you as an agency can operate in this changing world and that you've already anticipated what your client's going to want to see, right? And you're focused on leveraging those outcomes as faster, better, and cheaper. And we all are going to see those things come true. And once we balance out token costs on how fast we can have agents help us compress workflows. And I think the last piece here is, you've got to execute both internally and with external platform integrations as an advantage. If you did anything around, we're just building this to be an inward tool set, right? Where it doesn't have the right way to connect with external sources, right? Then it's just going to be another unique set of products that is something that generates some value, but it ends up being akin to a PDF that ends up ultimately being filed, right? And what you want to have is the outcomes you're going to build, the products you're going to leverage to get to those outcomes have to make that jump out of your four walls back into the tools that aren't native to your business, right? Your DSP, your SSP, the direct mail shop, the call center, wherever it might be, you've got to be able to bridge those gaps with it. Products that die inside of the four walls aren't going to generate any value for you. And so you got to lean forward piece that beyond that to be make sure that your internal products have a way to work with the industry and the ecosystem, that they don't become just a circular approach. So we're at the 140, a couple minutes over, as I unfortunately suggested we were getting there. But what do we cover today, right? I think that in summary, I tell you, the future agency is going to be data empowered across products that will leverage AI. AI is not the answer, right? I do think data empowered across products is going to be a big part of the answer. If you're not data empowered, you're going to miss this transition that's happening of how do you help clients bring a new ground truth to the work that's going to happen in and with AI. I think product focus and I'm seeing more product officers being hired across agencies is it's transformative, right? And it has to solve this business model debt. We're not going to move forward with billable hours. I don't think that's a winning solution. I don't think anyone should want to build a business that's based on that markup. Right? There has to be products that you're getting paid a fair value for that are driving the outcomes that matter to those clients. And the path to success for all things, I think, starts with if you're going to be able to convince clients and prospects that you're going to understand the consumer and turn that understanding into faster action on their behalf, whether it's through people, whether it's through AI, whether it's through integration or orchestration or agents or whatever that answer might be. You can stop the sentence here. You don't need all of that at the end and say, this is how we drive value for you, right? And you have to be able to show them that you can measure it on top of it. And if you can't do that, if you're saying, I don't really know who we're reaching, I don't really know how Meta's optimizing the campaign through their I don't really know what's driving success. Well, that's not a path of being able to show that you can drive competitive advantage for your agency. So I think there's an imperative to understand the consumer and be able to use that to build solutions that allow you to generate insights, generate recommendations, and take action on those. So that will be the extent of today. Questions, I mentioned we got one live. I'm going to tackle that one right now. So thank you, Meredith, for a question here. The question is in the spirit of incorporating agentic workflows into our process, is there any kind of resonating API on the roadmap to help fuel your platform data and insights via an agent we build? So short answer is there's both MCP solutions on the roadmap for Resonate to look at how we move forward in a market that's saying, hey, I need to have my agent plug into some of the raw data that sits inside of here. There are also standalone products that we offer now that are specifically designed to plug into agents that our clients are building, right? So that we can both have the orchestration layer of our Ignite and Ignition services, and we can have what we call predictive consumer intelligence installed into your AI solutions. So we have bridged that gap a couple of different ways. And for anybody who hasn't had a chance to check out Cortex, I would encourage folks to look at our first set of live operational agents for audience development and segmentation that are part of our Ignite platform, or check out some of the demos that are online, or give us a call and ask to have somebody talk to you about it. But absolutely, Merit, the answer is yes. And I think overall, we see more and more of our clients are asking for how can we, and I think the industry is seeing this, how can they start to build their unique product capabilities through the AI tools they're developing or the AI-enabled tools they're developing, and they want access to some of the raw data sets and the ability to pull work out of our infrastructure via Ignite into systems that they want to build. And our answer is we see the trend, and we're definitely building towards that this year and going into next year. Second question that we've got here today is, question around this idea of, hey, if you're moving from billable hours to subscription or usage-based pricing, how do you talk to clients about that, right? And I think the challenge is you've got a couple of things you've got to filter. The first piece is you've got to filter the idea of, internally, how are you assigning staff? How are you compensating staff? How is staff in being built into what their compensation model looks like, that then you're turning into, obviously the service fees you're offering your clients. The second piece of that is what should it look like in the future if you're going to say, hey, client, we're not going to change how we staff for your business. We're going to change how we bill you for certain things. And I think that comes up it's a lot easier to do for new business. I'm not going to suggest there's any other answer than that. It's easier to bring transformation to new business than it is to existing business where you've already got a live contract. So what we're seeing is clients start the process with new, and then as they get pressure from their existing customers on how are my fee structures going to change, you guys are doing a lot with AI. Where's the win in it for us? Then they can start to talk about this. Well, hey, here's a new service we can build that's going to allow us to change how we bill you. But I do think it's still very messy. There's no short answer to it other than it's definitely messy. And with that, I think in being respectful of everybody's time today, certainly appreciate the attendance and the attention for today. We have our next upcoming summer session is going to be next Wednesday on the 19th at 1 p.m. For holiday revenue, forget what's trending, predict who's spending, which I think, again, given the changes in discretionary spend and income available to customers, given all of the other price pressures in the market and affordability as a four-letter word, certainly hope everyone will tune into that. And thank you for your time and attention today. It's been a great pleasure of mine to be able to present this to you guys and look forward to hearing from you in either more questions or follow-up. Have a great day. Thanks, everyone.